In this video, we'll learn how to deal with partially filled arrays. So consider this scenario. You have a program in which you decided to use array as the data structure. Now, at the beginning of the program, you want to be flexible. So you define that you will have an array that is going to be of length, let's say 100. All right, so this way you're expecting the users will not go beyond this. All right. Now you have a couple of things here that you need to think about. The first thing is that this length of 100 is fixed, right? You cannot change that. You cannot go and expand this array or truncate this array. You cannot do this. The other thing is you have to compromise. You have to understand that you cannot reserve 1,000 places because this is going to take a memory, right? So each of these elements, the larger the array is, the bigger the memory it's going to reserve. Now, if you have a shorter array, then you are running the risk of needing more, and in that case, you cannot expand. And in this scenario, what will happen is that you will try to go and reserve a new, longer array, and then what you're going to do is to one by one copy elements from the old one into the new one, and then make sure that this is going to be garbage collected. So this is here a compromise, a decision that you have to make. You have to be a little bit it's more of an anticipation that I think the users will not go beyond that length. And in that case, you define some predefined set here like 100, right? Now, as the users or the user is using that application and starting to fill that array, you will get in that transition state in which the user, for example, is filling 10 elements, right? So if you have 10 elements, they are populated with values, but then the rest are all zeros, right? So now let's say at a certain point you decide and say, I would like to get the average of the array. Now you cannot go and count these zeros and divide by the whole length, right? You have to be dealing with those populated part or that populated part of the array. So that's what we mean by dealing with partially populated or partially filled arrays. Now to deal with this, all you need to do, there is no magic here. All you need to do is to actually keep track of what was the last element that you used, and that is populated with the user's values, right? So that's basically what you want to do. So if we look at this code here, so what I'm doing is that I'm creating a scanner here. I'm prompting the user. I define an array size of 10, and then I go and say create an array of integers. And then what I do is that I start to ask the user to fill the values and -1 to quit. All right. Now the user could go all the way to 10 elements, or they could decide to quit at any point, right? So at this point, what you want to do is to say, okay, as long as the user did not enter -1 and the count is still less than the size of the array, then keep prompting and entering the data. All right. So here I'm prompting for the first time. This is going to be the 0th element. So I go and put that in count, which was initialized to 0, and then increment count, and then prompt again. Then if the user enters -1, I would go and check here, it's -1, this and is 0, false, so I will exit. If not, then I will continue to prompt the user, right? And then just to show you that I could deal with partial array, I'm printing here the array using the array display method. So here I will run this, and then I'm going to say, okay, I'm going to enter 5 to -9 or -6, and then -1 to exit. All right. Now it seems confusing. -1 is a sentinel value, and then I entered -6. I shouldn't have done that. Let's say it's the assumption is that it has to be a positive integer, and -1 would be something that is different. And in that case, the code is going to exit on it. So anyway, so we have three values here. So as you can see here, we have partial arrays, partially filled array, and it's not completely filled. Now, if I want to go and calculate the average of this array, all right. So something I could do is to go and say, here is int total outside this. So I could go here and say int total is equal to 0, and then I'm going to say for int I 0. Or I could do it actually with a while loop, something like this. While I less than array.length. All right. So while this is true, what I want to do is to add the value to my total. Now, this is going to add all of it, but this is not what I want to do. So I'm going to add another condition here, which says and array sub I is not equal to 0. In this case, total plus equal array sub I. All right. Then here, this is going to keep adding the values, right? And then what I want to do next is to increment my I to move to the next element. Something like this. So that is going to count the total for the non-zero elements of the array. Perfect. Now what I'm going to do next is to average. Now the average, I'm going to say system.out.println average, or I'm going to say total divided by, and here in this case what you want to do is to keep track of the I. I is going to tell you when it stops at the non-zero or at a zero element, right? So in this case, I'm going to give this I compile. Let's say 1, 2, 3, 4, -1. All right. So this is going to give me. So here we have again the same issue. I'm going to cast this one. All right. So here 1, 2, 3, 4, and the average would be the 10 divided by 4, which is 2.5. All right. So this is how you deal with partially filled arrays. One quick note that I wanted to mention here, and to make sure that I actually forgot to mention this in the video of the sum and the average, which is whenever you do something like this, especially with the averaging, you have to make sure that you don't have zero elements. So for example here, let's say I try to enter here, and then from the beginning I would say -1. Notice here that it tried to divide by 0, and that's why it's giving you not a number. So one thing you need to do, and you want to do always, is to make sure that to check for if I is equal to 0 or not equal to 0, do this, right? Else you will need just, if it's equal to 0, this means the average is 0. So in this case, you can print something like this, just 0. Right? So this way you make sure that you avoid the scenario where you have a -1, something like that. All right, so that's it. This applies to getting the average of an array in the previous video.